So we're talking now about the late 1950s. The University of Sydney Law School was actually here in Phillip Street at that time.
It was. It went through to Elizabeth Street in two buildings. Yes, I well remember it.
I interviewed David Levine not long ago, and he said he remembered it as being an utterly depressing building.
I don't remember it as much as depressing as much as a rabbit warren, because it was two buildings fitted together, one in Phillip Street side and one in Elizabeth Street side, and their floors didn't coincide, so you had all these funny stairways everywhere that tried to join the two up.
Yes, he seemed to be very definite about the atmosphere of the building, and perhaps in a sense it not being as conducive as maybe some would like in terms of the sort of collegiate type of atmosphere. But I'm actually interested. Many I've interviewed have spoken very warmly of academics who were there at that time, and Professor Julius Stein was one of those, mentioned by many as a colourful, interesting character and an inspirational lecturer.
Oh, Julius Stein was wonderful, and he really made that subject, both public international law and jurisprudence, live. Yes, and there were many others there too. David Bengerfield was wonderful too, and the Roman law lecturer, Jack Iliff, was very good too. They were a good bunch of lecturers.
What areas of law were you beginning to get seriously interested in by then?
Difficult to say. I was interested in equity and equitable principles, but I didn't have any, and I really liked jurisprudence. But I really didn't. It was a fairly fixed curriculum at the time. There were no optional subjects. You did what you had to do, and it was all core subjects. There wasn't such a thing as environmental law, for example, or even local government law. That was not in the curriculum at all.
Were you even then beginning to form an interest in those areas, nevertheless?
I think so. It was pretty early days. We're looking still at the late 50s. And I think during the 60s I started to develop an interest.
What events during the 60s were triggering your interest? There's been some wonderful quotes attributed to, example, the then President John F. Kennedy about the importance of the planet. Were those things firing your idealistic young bones?
Oh, I guess they were to some extent, but I mean, it was mixed with lots of other things too. I was very interested in civil liberties at the time, as a member of and office bearer of the Council of Civil Liberties, which was quite a powerful organisation in its day. And that probably took precedence over the environment at the time, but it was a growing interest, I guess.
So studying in those years and forming at that point the beginnings of a desire to go to the bar, or were you at that time thinking maybe I'll be a solicitor first or anything like that?
Oh, well, I had decided to go to the bar. That's what I wanted to do. There was no doubt about that. But I didn't want to go without any experience in courtrooms or with courts or with litigation. And so I worked for a while in parish patience after I graduated. And then I worked for a while with the Department of Labour and Industry as a prosecutor, and that got me into actual courtroom situations where I had to get on my feet and present a case or defend a case. So that I did that for about 3 years, those jobs, and started practice at the bar in early '64.
Before we go to when you were admitted, there were a couple of people where you served your articles, and I believe they were very important figures for you because of their meticulousness, attention to detail and the like.
Yes, I did articles firstly with Philip Goldman in the City in College Street, and then he went overseas for a period and I transferred to Joe Slezak and John Webster at Eutha Webster and Slezak in Macquarie Place, and certainly I got a lot of very good experience with those firms, and Philip Goldman taught me to be meticulous in detail and preparation. That was one thing that I learned. Every day on his desk when you went in to see him, he'd have a very neatly written list of things that he had to do that day, and that taught me how to make lists, and I've done it ever since.
Did anyone you ever work with not keep lists and yet somehow manage to keep some sort of calm in the middle of all the chaos?
I think some people just keep it all in their head. I don't know how they do it. I need an aid memoir.
So you were admitted to practice in 1964.
Well, no, I actually was admitted in 61, but didn't
sorry.
commence practice till 64. I was admitted in March 61. I can remember Ken Carruthers was admitted at the same time, so he was one senior to me.
Who else was in your intake?
I can't actually remember all of them, but I can remember everybody from a lot of people from my year at law school, and they included Jeremy Badgery Parker, Mick McClelland, Murray Tobias, etc., etc.
Quite a crop.
It was, yes. Turned out that way.